I'm with the San Diego Air and Space Museum. The date is the
15th.
the 15th of November.
November 15th,
November
2013.
There you go. And we're here at the Air Museum, and we're talking to CE, or Clarence.
Clarence E. Bud Anderson.
And he is what is known as a triple ace in World War II. He's going to talk about his experiences here. And by the way, today or tomorrow, he's going to be inducted into the San Diego Air Museum Hall of Fame. Why or how did the United States Air Corps, Army Air Corps, defeat the Germans in World War II?
The Luftwaffe.
The Luftwaffe. And tell us in extraordinarily detail why and how we did it.
The way that the Luftwaffe was defeated was not the classic way, and it's not an unknown thing. It's just that it's kind of been ignored and just kind of passed over. You know, you say, well, yeah, we went over there. The 8th Air Force defeated the Luftwaffe and gained air superiority and allowed the invasion of Europe. So then the question comes, you got to go back into the 40s and all this stuff when air power was being invented. And you have to remember that the Army Air Corps had some great supporters of strategic bombing, the idea that air power could defeat an enemy and that you didn't have to, then you could just walk in, so to speak. The purest. The thing being, they thought that with bombers and accurate bombing capability, that air power could overfly the enemy, destroy his war-making capability, and that would be it. It was a great concept, but it's not really true until you got smart weapons and atomic bombs or hydrogen bombs. So World War II comes along, and this is the first real opportunity to test this theory of air power, you might say. And the biggest place it was going to make an impact was going to be Europe. Of course, it's all over, but I mean, you know, in the Pacific and everywhere. But the first opportunity was going to be Germany, because we decided to defeat Germany first. So when you talk air power, the first thing that the bombers have to do is to destroy the defenses. And what was the defenses of Germany? Primarily the Luftwaffe. So you had to get rid of the Luftwaffe first, so then you could go bomb the war-making capability of the enemy with impunity and really do your job properly. So the 8th Air Force got over to England in 1942 and started bombing. And when they got over there, the British told us, it's not going to work in the daylight. And why did we want to go in the daylight? Well, we had the Norden bomb site, and we had the B-17s, and the Norden bomb site could drop bombs very accurately in daylight and hit targets, not area bomb. You know, just don't go over there and bomb a city. Dump the bombs out at night like the British decided to do. The Brits said you can't do it. You'll take so much losses that you know, it won't work. We tried it, and we're bombing at night, and that's what we recommend you do. But we're Americans, and we're going to do things our way. And then we had this wonderful airplane, the B-17. We called it the Flying Fortress. And the thought was that it could fight its way into the target and fight its way out and fly in these big formations and maximize all their machine guns and all this stuff, and they'd be very successful. When they first got the B-17s, the Air Corps lost interest in fighters because the B-17 was faster than any fighter we had at the time. And so there was very little emphasis on fighters early, pre-war, stuff like that. And as we come up and when the B-17 arrives. So anyway, to move on, we get over there and we start bombing in the daylight, and the numbers are what count, and we had to build up the force. So they didn't really start doing any really good stuff, until later in '43. So I don't have all these dates in my mind, but. Then when they started going, so how do you defeat the Luftwaffe? Okay, we're going to go in there and blow up the factories, blow up the airfields, and blow up the airplanes on the ground. That's the concept. Well, of course, they started doing that, and then they went after other things too. They're starting to go after the fuel and ball bearings and all kind of a critical wartime material, not just for the Luftwaffe, but others. But first you got to defeat the Luftwaffe so that they can go in there and really do their bombing properly. Well, they got out there into, I think it was in the late '43, and they started doing this serious with the big bombers, big formations, in big columns, going over there, going after the targets. And I think it was the Regensburg raid somewhere late in '43. And they lost incredible number of bombers, like 60, 80 bombers. And that's 600 or 800 men, 10 men crews are going down. So they finally decided, wow, we really, we can't stand this kind of attrition. There's all the big war stories that you get about the bombers and about how hard it was are the ones that were in 1942 and 43 when they flew 25 missions. And it goes around and said it was theoretically impossible to complete a tour, by the loss rates. So, tough time. And they really did. They suffered very severe losses.
Yeah, just as an aside, there's a book called Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
And I read that. I mean, it was remarkable because General Travis, flying in the right seat of a B-24 to be in command, they were hitting a place down by Stuttgart, and this was when they found out this really won't work.
Yeah. Because
they got down there and it was weathered in, and so he made a circle.
Yeah.
With 360 airplanes.
Like a pass.
Once, twice, 3 times, and they lost like 20%.
Yeah. We had fighters over there. We had P-47, P-38s, and of course there were Spitfires. And I think the 4th group had Spitfires to begin with, part of the Eagle Squadron and everything that came from there. And then they got Thunderbolts. Well, none of those airplanes could go everywhere you wanted to go with the where the bombers wanted to go. They just didn't have the range to go there and hang around and do that. And then the Mustangs arrived. These get off onto tangent stories. I mean, how the Mustang got developed, and that's quite a story in itself. It actually happened by accident. It was built for the British. And Wright Field didn't want to have anything to do with it because it wasn't invented here. And it was the ideal airplane, but it was being built for the British. And fortunately, shall we go off on that tangent?
Yeah, that's fine. I talked to Colonel Paisanos about it
Yeah.
because he flew it. He flew the A model,
Oh, yeah.
and then he went into the Spitfires, and about then he got picked up by. They started talking to a guy he knew, Chesley Peterson,
Yeah.
and Peterson says, "Join us in the Eagle Squadron."
Yeah.
So he was only in it for about a month.
Yeah.
And I think they flew the Spitfires for another 6 months, and then they switched to the
Thunderbolts.
Thunderbolts.
And then they got the Mustangs.
Yeah.
After we did. Yep.
Yeah. By the way, the P-47 pilot last week, standing right there, he wanted nothing to do with P-51s. Spam cans, he called them.
Oh, yeah. Well, you believe in your airplane.
Well, for what he was doing, they were doing gunnery and dive bomb.
Yeah.
Made sense. So anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, let me finish that story, and then
Okay,
maybe
go
we'll
ahead.
go off onto the P-51 because
Okay,
it's
go ahead.
an interesting story in itself.
Sure, go ahead.
But the P-51s had already been invented and were invented for the British, and then they switched the engines, and then finally we started producing them for the Army Air Corps, and I'll tell that story later. So the first Mustangs, the Pioneer Mustang Group, 354th Group, was in England in 1943, summer of 43. And they didn't have anything to do, so to speak, because they were the 9th Air Force, and they were the ones that were going to cover the invasion.
Oh,
And here you are with the world's best escort fighter, and it's in the it's in the Ground Support Air Force. So when they
well, Hitler screwed up with the 262 as well.
oh
I mean,
yeah,
he wanted
oh
to use,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, and it reminds me of the Greatest Generation, and everything was real wonderful, and we did everything perfect and all this stuff.
They were people too, weren't they?
Well, have you ever heard of the word snafu?
Right.
Where was that invented?
World War II,
World
I'm
War
sure.
II. That gives you a clue.
Right.
Yeah, we were screwed up just like we are today.
Yeah, sure.
And anyway, so they're over there. They're getting their airplanes and don't have anything to do, so to speak, waiting for the invasion whenever it comes. He said, "Oh my gosh, we've got this great airplane over here. Let's try it out." It was an escort fighter, and it was so wildly successful. Then the 8th Air Force demanded that they get P-51s. And so our group
What
was,
kind of? Oh, the P-51A was about 400 horsepower shorter than.
no, these were Bs.
These are Bs. Okay.
These are the Merlin powered ones
Okay.
I'm talking about.
All right.
And so we are the second unit to be equipped with them, and we're on our way to the 9th Air Force.
And your unit was.
357 Fighter
Okay.
Group.
Okay.
So what they said, well, okay, you can't have the 354th because now they're already a legend, and they belong to the 9th, and they wouldn't transfer them to the 8th Air Force, so they transferred us. And we became the first unit to be assigned to the 8th Air Force as fighter escort mission. And all the rest of them were P-47s and P-38s.
When it was all said and done, though, so the P-47, the Wolfpack, Zemke,
56 Group,
50, and now that was 9th Air Force or 8th Air Force?
8th Air Force. They were the pioneers.
But their overall success was really great because they had the airplanes longer.
Longer, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they were the first ones over there.
And that was, and I think the initial cadres of those guys were trained helped out with tactics by the Eagle Squadron guys who were already there.
yeah,
Colonel Blakesley.
perhaps, yes.
Perhaps. And,
Yeah, perhaps. I think a lot of the training was do it yourself,
yeah.
We had very little. We had no combat veterans in our unit. We had one guy from the Pacific and one guy that had flown up in Aleutians. And we had lectures. Some of the Flying Tigers talked to us, and some of the Royal Air Force guys did.
Really, the Flying Tigers guys.
Yeah. But, that's in an auditorium, and it's, waving your arms and talking like things like this. Not there hands-on teaching you how to fly and stuff like that. Now we're there, and we start. We sent flight leaders to the 354th, and we flew a mission with them. Then sent another batch of flight leaders and squadron commanders, and flew one mission with them, and then come back. Then we take our group, and Blakesley came over from the 4th and led us on our first mission.
He must have been in combat for a couple of years by then.
Oh yeah, he was over there a long time. Yeah. So now we've got an airplane now that'll go wherever the B-17s want to go. But now, to get into the tactics that we had, the 8th Air Force was run by bomber pilots. And they dictated our escort policies. And they said, okay, we want you to stay with us. We want you to fly around us. We want to see you. We want you close. When the enemy comes in, we want you to drive them away and come back. And we actually had a 18,000-foot rule. If you hadn't shot the guy down by 18,000 feet, you broke off and came back up.
And this is with your wingman. You're flying as an element, so you're always a two-ship.
Right.
So, and your wingman is just staying with you no matter what.
Right. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we did the fluid 4.
Okay.
And we flew in large formations every day. 3 squadrons go out, pick up.
Squadron 24?
16.
16. Yeah. That's what it was in the Pacific, too, apparently.
Yeah, and 2 spares. So
you were basically signed like line abreast, probably with waving back and forth.
Waving, zigzagging back and forth, and waiting for them to come in. And it really wasn't exactly the way to do it, but those are the orders, and that's what we did.
How did the Germans come in?
They tried. They would try to make a mass attack and hit one spot. Come in there with 100, 200, 300 airplanes and try to overwhelm the escort. And they eventually liked to make head-on passes. They found that was most effective for them.
So they're doing 350, 400. The bomber's doing 200, 250. Closure ratio, 500 or so.
Yeah, the bombers weren't going that fast. They're slow. Yeah.
But would they just fire and then split us down?
Yeah, they would come in, roll over, and go down. If there's nobody there, they roll up, pull up, and come around again.
Really?
Roll over, come around. I'm sure they made some of these passes too. Early on, they had 110s, and they used everything they had. I never saw an ME 110 in combat, but they were there.
Yeah.
So we were not really taking care of the Luftwaffe too well.
Okay, so at this point, you actually saw some of these gaggles, as it were.
Oh yeah.
And then what would you do? I mean, if you're flying line abreast or slightly higher, then you just try and intercept them and take a shot at them?
Try to intercept them, as they're trying to prevent them from making their attack. But if they're out there miles away, lined up, there's not much you can do about it. You needed to get away and try to find them and break up those big formations away from the bombers.
And you had problems too, because you could get shot down by the B-17s because they're yeah.
Well, if you pointed your nose at them, they're going to shoot at you. No, that was accepted.
Wow.
If you were close enough and you went and pointed your nose at them, they're going to shoot at you.
Well,
yeah.
Why not?
Oh, they had a policy: shoot at everything and sort them out later.
God.
Yeah, and I'm sure they shot each other up because of those formations too.
So now so how long were you there before the tactic changed?
Well, okay, so this is what the setup is, and then to talk about airplanes, German airplanes. I remember reading a intelligence report in 1944, January 44, You know, they had so many thousands of fighters available, 109s, 190s, and all this. This was the estimate. Now, we're supposed to be destroying airplanes and factories and buildings. In January 1945, I read the same report. They had more airplanes then than they did a year earlier. So that wasn't working. Whatever we were doing to, get them on the ground or get them in the factories was not working. So in February, just about the time we really got started, late in February, General Doolittle took over the 8th Air Force. And to me, there's two factors that were significant. The arrival of the P-51 Mustang, the Bs and the Ds, the ones with the Merlin engines, and the change of command with General Doolittle as commander made a significant difference. And this happened in the spring of 1944. And most historians, I believe, accept the fact that that's the spring of 44 is when we broke the back of the Luftwaffe, which allowed the invasion. You had to have air superiority before you could invade. So what did Doolittle do? Read his book. And the story goes that he's the eighth commander. He has the 8th Bomber Command. He has the 8th Fighter Command. He went down to visit the Fighter Command, and they had a big sign up over the door. The mission of the 8th Fighter Command is to bring the bombers home safely. And he looked at that and he asked General Kepner, he says, who put that up there? He says, I don't know. It was here when I got here. And so he says, well, take it down. He says, the mission of the 8th Fighter Command is to destroy the Luftwaffe. And what he did was, he said, from now on, when you fighter pilots engage the enemy, you follow them, you take them to the ground and kill them. And then also, we had no 18,000-foot rule, and now we could actually send fighters out and find these big formations to try to break them up before they get to the bombers. And that's when the aerial victories started to soar. And what happened is the Germans did not have a good replacement pilot training program. They had a force in being, and they kind of had the concept, hey, we're going to go march through Europe and destroy everybody and take over, and that'll be it. Kind of, they weren't thinking of attrition war. And of course, then once we broke their skill level, we killed their experienced pilots is what happened. The big core of there. Then where the bomber losses went down, and they actually later on changed them to something like 35 missions from 25, and they could go wherever they wanted to go, and we could take them and stay with them, and they could bomb any kind of a target they wanted. And that's when the bombing then became really effective. But we did the first tenet of air power, destroy the defense. We destroyed the Luftwaffe by killing their pilots.
So what was the first mission? Were you there when they flew the first of these missions to go out and actually attack the Luftwaffe pilots?
Well, we didn't. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. Was it more we're going to kind of continue to fly cover, but we're going to chase the guys down to the ground to get them, or? Well,
what you did is we still kept. We're getting more and more airplanes, and then pretty soon they converted. There was 15 fighter groups in the 8th Air Force.
Wow.
By the end of the war, 14 of them were Mustangs.
Oh yeah.
They were so successful.
But the one holdup must have been the P-47s.
Yeah, the
and,
56 group.
and they just hung. And they
They did it out of pride. They were the pioneer P-47 unit,
Well, you must have had a lot of bar talk with those guys about which was a better airplane, right?
of course,
Did you ever go up and fight with one?
sure.
And
I didn't worry about them. Yeah, we had a lot of good dogfights over England, but
so was there? I'm sure there was some P-40.
we'll get back to the
Yeah,
escort.
okay,
Yeah, so we would still keep close escorts like that, but then it allowed us to also send the airplanes out and roam up and down and go out, and then send a few out to find these big formations and get them before they formed up and got to attack.
Well, I remember reading in your book there, you said you could see, you had really great eyesight, and you could see 100 airplanes 50 or 60 miles
Oh,
away.
yeah.
My God, I mean, what did that do to your heart rate anyway?
It was exciting.
Well, I mean, I can't even imagine flying in. I mean, the biggest formation I ever flown was over Paris, and I think we had 16 airplanes.
Yeah.
But we were doing it's one we had to leave, and,
Yeah.
and so we were all flying it. Good grief, it was ridiculous. I mean, one guy goes like this, and that guy, and then pretty soon,
Yeah. Well, the whole thing of World War II, Europe and everything, navigation itself I can really make a big deal out of it.
how's that?
Well, we're over and overcast
Ooh, right.
lots of the times, and in the clouds, and had to climb through clouds. And we flew every day in large formations. 16 ships here, 16 ships here, 16 ships over here. And you went out on a line, and the bombers, from England kind of flew in almost a kind of a triangle like this. Come back, go out here, come down, bomb their target, go down and back. And 500 miles,
Right.
to Berlin from England.
Yeah.
And so the big formation, you go in 16 ships, you stayed together, climb up through an overcast, reform, and then go out and meet your bomber stream at a rendezvous point. And you remember on the B-17s how the big tails, they had triangles and squares and
Sure, right.
big letters on them. That's how you found your bombers.
Yeah.
You went out and got there, it's okay, we're about right here, let's go along here, and then fly up and down until you found square D's or whoever you
No
were
kidding,
after.
really? Wow.
Yeah. And then you stayed with them until you got onto the, start making your bombing runs, or where the threat was a little higher. And then we would loosen up a little bit and let the guys get out a little farther and find them. But then the big thing was, once they did attack, then we didn't drive them away and come back. We followed them, just went right after them, followed them, and tried to finish them off.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the
Doolittle took a lot of flack over this.
Really?
Yeah. Bomber pilots kind of think I hated his guts. Called him a murderer and stuff like that.
Well, didn't they see their attrition rate dropping though? They must have seen that.
If that happens, over a year before you figure it out.
Well, I remember reading about that whole concept. The bomber will always get through. That was like Boom Trenchard, I think, was big on that.
Yeah.
The bomber will always get through. And
Yeah.
I just can't ever see anything like this ever happening again.
Yeah.
I mean, probably as close
Well,
as
what's made it different is the weapons.
Yeah. The force multiplier effect of
Yeah.
1 B2 equals 500 B-17s or whatever.
But a common day would be 800-900 bombers and that many fighters every day go out.
Right.
And the navigation coming home, we had no nav aids. You did everything pretty much by time distance.
You couldn't get a DF steer off of.
Yeah, you could. If you
Yeah.
got close enough to coming home, you
Yeah.
could. That was the lone thing we had. And that only told you, yeah, you went across your field. But then if if you're in the overcast you got to let down through it and then find the ground and then visually find your base.
Well, they didn't really. That's all they had for the bases.
Yes. And you got hundreds of airplanes coming home doing the same thing.
But you were at a totally fighter base, right? Your base
Totally fighters.
Is it Leicester? Is that how they say it?
Leiston.
Leiston.
Leiston or Leiston.
The P-47 pilot told a great story the other day. At some of the islands of the Pacific, they were just completely covered with airplanes, fighters and bombers and everything. And when they would recover, the P-47s were pretty much out of gas because they had to go such a long way. He said the most he ever flew was like 7 hours in a P-47. That's a long time.
Yeah.
But he said what they figured out was the B-24s had to land within 1 minute spacing. So what they figured out they could do with a flight of 4 P-47s is come in, and when the P-47 crossed the threshold, they would do pitch-ups, what he called a 45-degree loop. Gear flaps right back down. They could land 4 airplanes between every B-24.
Yeah.
Wow.
We used to land. We could get 4 airplanes on a runway at once, and we did it almost every day, every flight. If you came back with 4,
So if you would do a 4-ship landing,
you'd come in, pitch out like this 1, 2, 3,
Right.
4, and then you'd land left, right, depending on the crosswind.
so really close though.
Yeah, and kept your tail up,
Right.
and then let it down when you get down the end. By the time you turn off, your last guy's coming is probably on the runway already.
Okay.
That unit, and there's a need to get the airplanes on the ground, and there's safety involved and all this stuff. You take a 4-ship. If you come around, and the guy lands 3 points out on the end of the runway, nobody's going to get in behind him because your nose is like this. Once you put your tail down, you can't. You have to S-turn a little bit like this,
Right.
and you can't. It would clog up the runways. So we always made the wheel landings so you could get down, make room. Number 2 could come over here. He's clear. And then that make room for this guy and then this guy. If you're just going to go out and fly it,
Yeah.
a 3-point is probably the most efficient way to do it. But it's easier to wheel land than it is to.
Did you have a steerable tail wheel
Yes,
and off the rudders?
yes.
You're involved in shoot downs of many airplanes, 16 and a quarter.
Yeah.
I guess that was everybody in the flight had a shot at.
Yeah. You share it with other people, of course.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of halves, 2 guys
Yeah.
do it. But what happened was one time we were having a dogfight with some ME-109s, and we had gotten down on the deck, and I had seen, while we're dogfighting, I saw actually it ended up being a shadow, but I saw a motion, and I couldn't, we were too busy to figure out what the hell it was, but I saw it. So when we finished them up, I got to say, come on, guys, get up here. I think I saw an airplane up here. Did anybody see anything? No. Okay, so well, get up here and get in line abreast. And I headed off in the direction that I thought he was going. And we hadn't gone 5-10 minutes, and I come up there, and it was a bright, clear day at noon. And it was spring. It was May, late May, green, just greener now. And bright sunlight. I look up again and I see a shadow again, and I don't see the airplane. I can't see it. What the hell is this? And we got up there, and here's an old Heinkel, just trying to hug the ground. And you could see the shadow, but he blended in with the thing. If it had been hazy, I never would have seen him. And so we pull up there. Look around. There is not a soul in the sky. A while ago there was a big air battle going. Now there's nothing out there. What the hell we got here? Obsolete bomber, probably being used as a transport.
Where do you suppose he was? Over Germany or
This
France?
was back in Germany, you know. And I thought, oh boy, what a fish in a barrel, you know. We could have his tail and blow his ass off, you know. And I thought about my flight of 4. My wingmen don't get to shoot very often. And so I thought, these guys had flown with me, and so I said, okay guys, get into practice gunnery formation. They knew immediately what that meant. They're going to get to shoot. So, you know, I don't know whether you ever did banner gun firing, you know, a curved pursuit.
Mm-hmm.
You got a target going along here, and you line up echelon, lead goes in, makes a left-hand fire, goes over here and sets up on the perch this side, 2. Here, gets up, and then you got echelon on the other side. When all 3, 4 gone through, then you make a right-hand pursuit curve. So I make the first pass, and they had a gunner. We silenced him. We got 2 engines, one of them burning and one smoking badly. And by the time the second everybody had gone through, I personally scored every one of them and saw hits on the airplane. So that's how we got a quarter of a hit per thing. But the guy gets up on the and it's a big field comes up ahead, way up ahead. You can see he's heading for it, and he's going to try to belly it in. He can't bail out; he's too low, and so he pushed it in and put it on wheels up on the ground, and was crashing along there, burning, and hit something, and it broke the left wing open and spun him around. And 2 guys got out of the airplane. They got out, and one of them just stood out there in front, you know, looking up at us. And we're like, God darn hornets going around up there, you know. And the other guy took off, started running. And there's no place to hide. I mean, nothing. I mean, there is no cover. So I thought, well, let's give this guy a thrill. So I went down like I'm going to strafe him, buzzed right up across the top of him, and pulled up. And we got the flight together and went home. But that's how you get a quarter of a kill. We share it with 4 guys.
But at least you weren't going to shoot him on the ground.
No, I couldn't shoot him in parachutes either.
Some people did, though, apparently.
I did. That's right. It happened. The Germans did it, and some Americans did it.
Hey, here's okay. Let's talk about air combat tactics. I mean, you learned how to fight. Here's something I never understood. When we used to, in the F4, when we would shoot we call it the dart. You know, it's a big thing you drag 1,500 feet. Guy goes into a climbing left turn, a different, you know, then he clears to roll in. So we had some deflection. But what I could never understand is why, if you come roaring in there, you're doing 550, 600 knots, and you get a 1/10 of a second to fire. You fire and you pull the nose up and you roll away from the other airplane. And then you roll right back in again. And I never could figure out how the hell that worked.
Well, it gives you separation.
Yeah, but how do you get back? It seems like you're rolling the wrong way. It seems, but it always worked. It's right there.
Well, you can go either way. What you're trying to do is you're overtaking,
right,
and you're trying to
kill your speed.
You're trying to slow down, so you can roll either way. It depends on how this guy's. Well, there's a lot of factors go into it, but generally when you do a roll, what you're trying to do is get yourself spaced back a little foot.
But keeping your speed.
Yeah, and that does that.
Yeah,
that does it for you.
And we had afterburners. You didn't have that.
You know.
What's the fastest you ever went in a P-51?
Oh, I don't know. They had a red line at 505.
You ever get compressibility?
I never did. The only time I followed one guy I'd shot down at very high altitude. The one that's in the History Channel Dogfight series. I described this guy getting him going up like this. And I got him, and he went over and just was just going straight down like this, and just smoking like crazy. And so I couldn't tell whether I knew I damaged him. I think he was dead. But he was just going straight down, so I'm following him. And I went through 20,000 feet faster than I've ever been in my life. You know, it was starting to feel bad. And I just came back on the throttle and then just kind of went into a big orbit watching him, figuring if he's going to run, he'll flatten out, and then I can, cut him across that way. But he went right into the ground from
So
30,000 feet.
you think that perhaps he was in a compressibility state and he couldn't control it even if he'd been alive?
Yeah.
You would think the trim of the airplane would pull it out.
This thing went right straight in, just, damn.
Wow.
Very dramatic.
So what's your wingman doing in a situation like that?
Well, but at that point, I'd lost my wingman.
That was probably typical, wasn't it, to lose a wingman?
I only lost him temporarily. Yeah.
How'd you join up? I mean, when you finished
Well,
the fight?
he saw this in this particular dogfight. We got down to it was 4 against 4. We shot 3 of them down.
Where were we in the war, time-wise?
This was spring of 44, May 27th.
When did you go home?
I went home on my first tour in July, came back, and I flew another tour and came home in February of 45. War was still going on.
Okay, so May of 44, this is probably when they've kind of lost the skill level they had earlier.
We were about to get them, yeah.
Well, I remember you've said in here a couple times, this guy could fly.
Yeah. Well, but even you take in 1945, they still had guys with 100 victories out there too. If you remember,
Yeah.
so it kind of depended on who you were running into.
Were they flying? Did they usually have wingmen too? I mean, I know the Germans started the Finger 4,
Oh yeah,
but did they stay in the element formations?
it's funny. We called them gaggles, and it looked like they just flew in a bunch of bees. And I don't know whether they had. They used the Finger 4, but the only time I ever got into one flight versus one flight, they were already in a string. They were coming down like this after us.
Right.
And
So okay, there you got a flight 2 or 4
I had a flight of 4.
in a spread formation, and they're coming down in a direct.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, we were on this close escort, and we were in Finger 4, and the bombers are going this way, and we're zigzagging. We're right here. We'd actually heard some stuff going on up ahead, and we were kind of moving up to the front. And when you made that turn, we're still in the Finger 4, loose. My inside guy says, "Hey, we got 4 of them coming down on us from 5 o'clock high," and they were in string, ME-109Gs, high altitude guys. Well, we saw them, and we just rotated the whole formation. When I did that very, very hard, that put them in string. I just reefed it in as hard as I could. My wingman just hanging in there, and then the other 2 guys come in behind. So we just went head on with them. And nobody had a chance to fire. It was just too fast, and just went through each other. The bombers are way down here. And I thought, oh, shoot, those guys are going to go down and get the bombers and get out of there. Well, they turned left. They wanted a dogfight. One of the few times, that it was fighter against fighter, where I could tell they purposely were attacking us. And this was right at the altitude where the Mustang can really perform with a 2-speed supercharger. So with full power, 29,000 feet, somewhere in there, somewhere between 25 and 30 now. We're starting this. We get into a 4-ship, 4 against 4, 4 across, directly across. Well, a Mustang could outturn them at that altitude pretty good. So after about 2 turns, I gained on them. Well, they saw that, and what they did is they rolled out and then flew level back towards Germany. So we roll out behind them. So we're there's 4 and there's 4 of us, and we're chasing them. And then the number 4 guy in the German, the last ME-109, starts to climb like this. And the rest of them are going this way, and we're coming under him, So I said, that doesn't look good. So I sent my element leader and his wingman. I said, you go take care of him, and we'll follow the 3. He did, shot him down, and then joined us later. So now we got 3 ME-109s in trail and 2 Mustangs. And that's how you shoot a guy down, is 6 o'clock. Just come right up behind him, come within 300 yards,
Well,
fire a burst.
why would they let that happen?
I think they thought they could outrun us because they had the G models, their best high altitude fighter. And it depends on who you're fighting against. You don't know who it is,
Yeah.
And a lot of them would not do that. They would immediately roll and dive for the deck. Well, so I just drive up behind this guy and close in, fire long bursts, get hits all over him, smoke coming back. A thing that surprised me in this particular case, and I've never seen it before, the guy rolls over, flies inverted. And I said, what the heck's he doing, He's got to be pretty uncomfortable there,
Hanging from the
splattered
straps.
up against the canopy.
Yeah.
I said, well, it doesn't matter. So I'm sitting right side up, and I gave him another big burst, and I really got him there. And then he came apart, and he's gone. And he just went off. So now we got 2 guys up ahead. Yeah, they're looking back, trying to see what's going on back here, and all of a sudden one of them makes a violent left turn, the other guy rolls and runs. So we go after the guy in the turn, and he makes a turn like this. So we were going straight. He put a lot of energy into this turn, lost a lot of airspeed. And I'm looking at him like this, and I said, well, I'm going too fast. I don't want to get in here and come back with a throttle and mush down and lose out, or I don't want to overshoot behind him.
Worse yet. Yeah.
So I said, well, I'm just going to cut across, pull up, see what he does. Look back. If he goes this way, I'm going to go after him. He rolls over this way though and comes after us. Now I've got a wingman coming up with me. So we're here, and I'm looking back at him, and I see him go like this. Well, that meant to me he's chasing my wingman. And I told John Scarrow, okay, he's after you. You take evasive action, and I'll cover you. So he did, and I watched him. And the German tries to get on his tail. Well, that put me right on there. He saw it right away, the German did. He breaks it off, stretches out again, comes around this hard turn again, and I'm still kind of 90 degrees to him. I'm going like hell now. And I thought, well, I think I could out-zoom him again. So he turns, and he makes a big climbing turn, so I just coasted by him, pulled up again, and I look back to see what he's going to do, And sure enough, he rolls around and starts to come after me. Well, he lost a lot of energy doing that.
Yeah.
And I felt pretty good about it. I felt like I had the upper hand, but
Airspeed.
I'm thinking plan B. You don't ever want anybody behind you.
Yeah, right.
So I said, oh, now I got him, So I could really start pulling it up. And so he's trying to find it. Now, to shoot at me, he's got to get up here like this and lead me.
Mm-hmm.
He's here. We're both just like this. We're just kind of going like this. He can't get his nose up there to get a shot. So I said, well, you know, the first guy that stalls here is going to be in big trouble. And so I'm pulling like this, and 30,000 feet, 29,000 feet. You don't last long going steep.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably 40, 45 degrees. And all of a sudden I see him start to wallow. And then he has to rudder it off. And so I just rudder off and follow him down again. Go down like this. And he does the same thing. Hard left turn. Well, I didn't want to be up above, in front of him again. And, and it was a little different setup. It wasn't quite, you know, it wasn't this steep angle. I was back here a little bit. And I thought, well, I'm going to try to get inside of him and maybe get a shot at him. I just lowered a little bit I kept the power, full power, sucked it in, and he sees that I'm cutting across at him. And I don't know what he thought. You know, he's kind of screwed up. He's got two choices. He can tighten it up and, you know, go into a spiral. But he chose, I think what he thought was that I slowed down. And so he reversed his turn. Well, that solves my angle off. Now I'm right on his tail. Then he pulls it up. And I think he thought, you know, I cut the power, mushed in around behind him, and then he had his full power. He could just turn and zoom up. But I'm sitting there at full power. So I just followed him up. And he pulled it up like this. I just pulled up inside of him and got over there, got a little angle off and fired. Saw a tracer go out here on his right side a little bit, gave him a little left rudder, and then I just got him all over the center of the airplane. And he just almost stopped up there, and I just come up alongside of him. His prop was just a windmill and smoke. First, just a lot of gray, probably a coolant. Black smoke starts coming out. And then from right there, he just rolled like this, very slowly, went over like this, went from 28,000 feet, maybe. Could have been 30, I don't know, 28, 29. And this is the one I went right straight on down. 20,000 feet, I kind of let him go. And a bright, sunny day, I saw his shadow coming over here. Here he's coming, and his shadow coming on. Jesus, just, I mean, right, just absolute vertical, going straight in. And it was pretty exhilarating. You know, here we had been attacked by 4. We turned the tables on them and shot 3 of them down, and got our flight back together. That John, you know, when he broke it off and the German was following him, and then he got lost. Then he saw this big puff in the sky where I shot him.
Oh, wow.
And he says, "Oh, I wonder who that is." So he started sneaking over there, and he saw me, and that's how he got back with me and joined up.
Wow.
And then we got Eddie Simpson. He had shot the other guy down, and so
good night at the bar that night, huh?
That's you don't get. I had several kind of one-on-one dogfights like that, but you don't generally get them that way. You see a guy come in behind him and you get him. He didn't see you, or when he sees you, it's too late. You know, stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah, exciting stuff. I'll tell you, it's. I talk about adrenaline, and I guess that's what it is. And but you know, you can be flying with a cold and your butt's sore, and you're sitting on a goddamn dinghy, and I don't care how it is. That bottle seems to always get around there and jam you in the ass, and you're so goddamn tired, and you have to stay constantly, you know, alert. I mean, it's very fatiguing. All the time you're over Germany, you better be looking around. And you know, you've been doing it, the average out mission about 4.5 hours. And say you're on the way home and you're You say, oh shit, you know, I hope we don't run into anything. You know, I'm tired. And if somebody will call out a bogey or you know, a contrail or something, or a, hey, ME 109 at 9 o'clock, low, high, or whatever. And man, your senses come together. You can breathe, you know, and your ass doesn't hurt, and adrenaline is an incredible thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and then talking about average mission, 4.5 hours. That's in my personal 116 missions, 480 hours. The longest mission I ever flew was on D-Day, 6 hours and 55 minutes, and I still had well over an hour's fuel. But we saw no combat, you know, we were just patrolling.
Why do you suppose they didn't come up? Why didn't the Germans come up? They had
On D-Day?
Yeah, why?
They screwed up. They thought it was a feint, and they didn't want to wake up Hitler.
So when this was going on, the dogfight we were just talking about, you were 22.
Yeah, age 22, almost all my combat, age 22. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
I know.
We have, you know, all these young soldiers that come back from these, you know, these wars we get ourselves into all the time. And, you know, they have these PTSD problems, but it doesn't seem to be a problem with pilots. Is it because they don't really see the enemy face to face? You think that's it? I don't know. Or is it just the training, or I don't quite get it. I've never known a pilot to have a PTSD problem.
Yeah. Well, you don't see the guys blown apart, you know, and it's a little cleaner.
Yeah, that's for sure.
From that standpoint.
And you get to go to the bar at night, I guess. Too.
But do you know what? This is another one of these. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. One of these facts that the 8th Air Force. One of 17 air forces that the Air Force had in World War II, had more casualties, more deaths than the entire Marine Corps. It's probably the most dangerous place to be.
Yeah, flying along with all the protection of a beer can.
Mostly bomber crews, of course.
Yeah, 37,000 they say. 37,000 men.
Yeah. Deaths.
Yeah.
And you had to figure out, you know, on your own, you take my squadron that we trained with, 28 guys deployed over Europe, flew the war, it's all over. Exactly 50% of them are either killed or prisoners of war.
What happens when you talk to Luftwaffe pilots? I mean, you've been, over these years, you must have been into a bunch of them. You met some of the most famous ones, right?
I wouldn't walk across the street to meet one for years. And then many years later, then I started meeting them. But the guys that we met were very famous ones. Gunther Rahl, you know, 275 victories. I went to many events with him. And I finally got it where, you know, we could talk, you know, and he would say, well, you know, on the Battle of Britain, he says, we're climbing out over there and I see all these contrails up there. And I got these guys saying, oh, I have a rough engine. Oh, my oxygen system's bad. He says, Bud, you have any of those kind of guys in your unit? I say, oh, yeah, we had a few. But he would talk like that, you know, and he'd talk about meeting Hitler and things like that. He did most of his stuff on the Russian front.
Yeah, I've seen that story where he talks quite a bit, and he seemed like an awfully nice guy, didn't he?
Well, he learned English, and he was a commander of the modern Luftwaffe, you know, so he had a lot of. He came over here and trained in jets, and
how about Gallen? Did you meet Gallen?
I met him. Yeah.
What was he like?
He's a little more arrogant. I didn't have that much contact with him, but I mean, I've heard guys say, though, well, we didn't lose the Battle of Britain, we just quit, you know, crap like that.
What kind of rescue what do they have for rescue for the Americans in the Channel?
Well, that's the only rescue we had. You know, you take the Korean War and the Vietnam War. We had a marvelous, go after the downed pilots.
Mm-hmm.
There was no way of doing that in World War II. And the only rescue service we had was the Brits had. I can't remember the name of them. A little seaplane.
Was it the Kingfisher? Is that the?
No.
It's a Navy airplane.
Yeah, but they had a airplane that if you went down the sea, we had a way of doing it. You called and they got a vector and they would send them out and look for you. And we had a few guys get rescued.
Did you guys? You didn't have poopy suits in those days, did you?
No.
But you did have G suits. I thought that was interesting in your book.
We did, and we had two kinds of them. We had a water suit.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Explain that one.
Yeah, it was terrible. But you put on something like I'd call it like a bib overalls. But of course it's supposed to tight fit all the way around. And then right here there was a spigot, and the crew chief would come up and with literally a pitcher of water, pour it into the funnel, and you'd get all this stuff around you after you got in the cockpit. Well, there's a couple things wrong with it. Water would cool, and a lot of our flights were, spent a lot of time above 25,000, unpressurized and cold. We had a little tube that came out over your right foot that had the word heat written on it, but there was no heat.
That was it?
That was it. And so it got cold. And the other thing, the materials weren't good enough the water would start really bagging and stretching this stuff down around your legs and ankles. I think I only made one flight with them. And then the other one was pretty much like the suits that we had in the Air Force for years.
Yeah.
Around your calf and here and here and here, and takes it off the pressure side of the vacuum pump.
What was it, the maximum G's you would pull in a P-51?
The what?
The maximum G's you would pull.
I can't remember exactly, but I think they were a 7G airplane, something like that.
Enough to black yourself out.
Oh
at
yeah,
least.
you could do that, but you couldn't sustain it very long. Not like the jets.
Well, not like the really modern jets, but the F4.
Oh yeah, you can max G, accelerate, climb. Yeah. I had to serve 18 months in the recruiting. Well, I went to the training command first.
Oh,
the war was still on.
Yeah.
When I came back.
No, you came back in, what'd you say, May 44? Right.
No, I came back on February 1st, 45. And the war lasted until April or May in Germany, and then August. So.
Before I forget, I always ask World War II vets, what do you think when the war was finally over?
How did I feel? Oh, I was exhilarated. Yeah.
How'd you find out?
Newspaper.
How about the atomic bomb? How'd you find out about that?
Newspaper.
Really?
Yeah.
Where were you?
In Texas, in a training command.
Which base?
Perrin Field.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We had T-6s.
Oh, boy, that must have been a letdown.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of a funny assignment because we were the first combat returnees to come to that field. And all these guys had been there the whole war. And then here we come. We're the leading edge of them. And we're replacing them. They're going to go to the war now. And they don't like that.
Really? Did you know
we weren't too welcome. Thousands of pilots that never saw combat in World War II. Americans, I mean.
Well, I think we trained 200,000 pilots and had 300,000 airplanes.
Yeah.
We outproduced everybody and everything. I mean, that's probably fundamentally the real reason we won the whole darn thing is we outproduced everybody. So, well, did you fly those? Oh, by the way, the 262.
Mm-hmm.
You did see some in.
Oh yeah.
And
I chased them too.
And
262 stories. You know, a lot of people ask me if the Germans had used them properly from day one, would it have made a lot of difference in the war? It might have made some difference, it might have delayed a little bit, but not the ultimate outcome, I don't think. The early jets were, you know, they're 100 knots faster than we were.
Mm-hmm.
The thing was that the engines weren't good on them, and they have very short legs. They took off. They had to come back down. If they used them against the bombers, they would have done a lot of damage, and using them against the fighters was a different thing. You know, they could not really dogfight with you. If they slowed down, got into a dogfight, a turning dogfight, a Mustang would eat them up. And we knew where they were. And Mustangs had, 8 hours of fuel. We could put a squadron of Mustangs over the field, wait for them. They had to take off, they had to land. A lot of people don't realize it, but our group shot down 19 of them, 17 or 19, something
Wow.
like that, and most of them in the traffic pattern.
Yeah.
I chased a couple of them. One time we were escorting, the bombers were over here, and I was going along, and I saw him going this way. Well, we're going the wrong, and so I rolled over like this, and started down and I still have him in sight, but he's just going like hell. And I thought, geez, I better look around. I look around behind me. Christ, here's the whole 8th Air Force. P-38, P-47 Mustangs all going after this one guy. Jesus, I'm out of here. And the one guy that I might have gotten, and here I have to tell the whole story because we're over Germany, and I'm in a flight of 4, and we're spread out in line abreast. I still have my tanks with some fuel. I don't need them. I got plenty of fuel. Everybody gives me hell when I tell a story that said, "Ha, the German made you drop your tanks." But and we'll talk about that too. But I see him coming, and he's 10,000 feet below me. You can see the black smoke. And he's going to go 90 degrees, and he's not going to change, you can tell. And I said, well, okay. I tell my flight, full throttle. I tell him what I'm going to do. I said, at the right time, I'm going to pull up like this, get over on my back so I can see down, look up, down through the canopy.
Right.
See him coming, and then at the right time, come right on his tail. So I get everything full throttle, full RPM, full throttle up, get the speed up. I'm watching. I said, okay, guys, here we go. Pull up, drop tanks now. I dropped my tanks, and the engine quit.
Oh, jeez.
I'd screwed up.
You forgot to switch.
Forgot to switch the main. There I was at 30,000 feet upside down, propeller ran away. I switch tanks, get the throttle back, get the propeller under control, get the power going, and I'm upside, and I'm there. I still think I can pull it off. Well, I followed him down, rolled out, pulled up, and if I'd have pulled up and put the pipper right on him and fired the instant I got down there, maybe I might have got a hit or two, but he just disappeared right behind that pipper. There wasn't much you could do. They had speed. The only thing you could do was go head on with them, and they had big 30mm cannons in them.
Right.
That would be no fun.
What about now, when you rolled upside down and the fuel flow quit, you say the propeller ran away?
Yeah.
Why did it do that?
Well, the engine quit and it surged, and it oversped. Yeah.
It's a Hamilton standard prop, right?
Yeah.
You'd think it would just keep the whatever was.
It was at high RPM, and then the engine just quit.
When you run for high RPMs?
I'm sorry.
When you went to full power.
3,000 RPM.
3,000. And normally in cruise, how much?
23, 2,400.
Did you have water injection?
No.
No, really? I wonder why. P-47 had it. You said it was like 400 horsepower with the water. Yeah. And they had 2,000 horsepower, I believe. Mm-hmm. But just a big lunk of an airplane.
Yeah.
Did you ever fly one?
No.
Really?
Did. No.
So you flew the P-51B and D, and then, of course, the T-6. Any other World War II airplanes did you fly?
Oh, P-39.
Oh, right.
Which I trained in, all models, all different models.
Did they really shoot up the water tank at Tonopah?
I only know that as a story.
Oh.
Yeah. I certainly didn't do it. And I can't verify that it was done, but it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, my 105 stories are not that great because.
Well, first of all, how did you miss Korea? How did that happen?
I was in flight test.
Oh.
Yeah.
God, that must have been fun.
And actually, if you'd just served in World War II, there was no real push to get you to go to Korea. It did not arise for me to do it. I was in fighters and I was in flight tests, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And by that time I was a light colonel, and your opportunities to get into a good flying job are, pretty well funneled down to, if you're a captain, you can go anywhere. But when you get a higher ranks, if you want to go to a good fighter outfit or something, you don't have the spaces for them.
Well, how did you manage to wangle the F-105? You were squadron commander, were you? Or wing commander?
No, wing commander.
Wing commander.
Yeah. Well, I was a full colonel, and that's the job you get when you're a full colonel if you're going to fly. Yeah, and I had gone to Okinawa to the 18th Wing as a DO, and then the vice commander and the commander, and I checked out in 105. I was combat ready. We had units and TDY down there. We had nuclear alert. We were full ORIs, all the training responsibilities and stuff. And then
the F-105, when they were carrying the nukes, did they carry it in the back of it? Wasn't that whole idea with the 105 is they're going to carry it internal in the back of the airplane?
In the center, in the bomb bay.
Okay.
It had a little bomb bay.
Right.
Yeah, and the doors open and pumped and closed the doors.
Wow.
A few seconds.
Yeah.
Low level attack.
What they call VLAD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we had nuke weapons, and we were fully expected to go to Southeast Asia because I was combat ready. I'm ready. Where should I go? No, I had to go to the Pentagon again. So I'm at 28 years of service. I'm going to be mandatorily retired in 2 years. So shooting, no flying. You don't fly. I gave up. I said, hell. Well, after about let's see, I guess I had about 3 or 4 years to go when I got there. So about a year and a half, Colonel's assignments called me. He says, hey, we got a need here for you have to have been a wing commander, you have to have been checked out in the equipment, and it's in Southeast Asia, Thailand. You want to go? And I said, now you tell me, And he said, hey, you don't have to go. He says, your name popped up. You want to go or don't you? And I said, I thought about it a little bit, and I says, hell yes, I'd like to go. What the hell, this is what the Air Force is all about. So I didn't know much about the Vietnam War.
What year was it?
I was in the Pentagon, and I knew what I read in the newspapers and rumors and all this. The morale was bad, and it's a bad war, and we're fighting with our hands behind our back and all this stuff. And I thought, well, you know, and I'm up for mandatory retirement, and I thought, I was worried about my Air Force, you know, literally. And I decided to go anyway, to make a long story short. I got, a lot of my peers thought I was crazy. Number one, you might get killed. Number two, why do you want to go over there as a wing commander and face all the problems that you possibly could have, you know, race, women in the service, just all kinds of problems that are potential. And I'm glad I went, because I got over there and I found out that those problems, I didn't run into them. And I found out that the fighter pilots that I worried about were still gung-ho. All they needed was a good mission. And now, when I got there, they were not going to the north. And the other thing they threw at me is, after I decided to go, they said, well, we got to tell you one thing, they're going to close the base sometime. And I said, oh, wait a minute, what happens to me then? He said, well, you're in the pipeline. Oh, well, that means I'm going to 7th Air Force headquarters or 713th or something. And so that's not a good deal, because I'm volunteering to do this, and I want to, said, take it or leave it, you know. So I went.
Which base?
I went to Talk-Lee, 355th, and I found out. I'm really pleased I went, because it changed my attitude about the Air Force right when I'm going to retire.
So the F-105, same idea, flight of four.
Flight 4, sure.
Fly 4, and you go in, and then you were doing pretty much dive bombs. Was that pretty much you did? And then, well, I guess you didn't have MiG problems, so you didn't have to worry about.
No, we were all, you know, Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Yeah.
A little bit in Laos. And,
what year was it again? I forget.
71.
We had a fellow here who flew 105s, and I asked him one time how, you know, you got out, and he said, we just, you know, with the MiGs were in back of us, so we just firewalled it. And I said, how fast did you go? He said 1.2 on the deck. Is that right?
Yeah, it's fast.
It would go that fast.
That's one thing a Thud will do. It was built to fly fast at low altitude, and very comfortably too. It's, you know,
Wow.
It has a high wing loading, so it's like sitting in this chair.
Well, the 1.2 has got to be 720, 750,
700 and something. Mm-hmm.
Good grief. How long could it fly? What kind of range did it have?
Well, we refueled twice.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we even refueled on the ones going into Laos, the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
one of the best stories I think you told in the book here, right there, I'm pointing at it, was your final mission in Europe. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, it's a good story. And the first thing I have to tell you is that I did not have to be there. It was a second tour, which was purely voluntarily. Matter of fact, I had to go see a shrink to come back on a second tour. You know, once you left, you get back in the pipeline. And I had orders to go back to the same unit, fortunately. And I said, wait a minute, you got to go see a shrink. And all he wanted to do was say, do you know that you do not have to go back to combat? And I said, yes, I know that. Okay. So the point is, I didn't have to be there. And the other point is, Chuck Yeager didn't have to be there. He was shot down, escaped, came back, and got permission to finish his combat tour. And whenever you've been interned, you're not supposed to do that. And if you've escaped out of a country, you're not supposed to go fight in that country. And so he didn't have to be there. I want that established.
Mm-hmm. Right, got it.
So I'm on my second tour. He's finishing his first tour, and he comes to me in the fall and winter of '44, and he says, "Hey, why don't we finish our tour together, and then we'll go back together, and maybe we could be assigned together and continue our friendship." Our friendship started to develop real good then. And so I said, well, okay, I'm the operations officer now, and he's a flight leader. I said, I can make that happen. I'll schedule it. And so we're going along, and he comes again, and he says, it would be hell to get shot down on your last mission. And we did lose a couple of guys on their last mission. And Gabreski went down on his last mission,
right.
One of the biggest aces we had.
Yeah.
And so he says, why don't we go out as spares on our last mission? If nobody aborts, let's go on a sightseeing tour down through Switzerland and look over that beautiful country down there that we see all the time.
Well, he had a particular place he wanted to go. It was a place that he had met someone in Switzerland, right?
Yeah, he allegedly went down there because he walked out over the Pyrenees, and he went down there and met the American ambassador, and they had this idea of the guys down there interned
right.
to walk out over the Alps.
Right.
And he went there and went to a hotel and all this stuff on Lake Annecy. And he's telling me this story, how beautiful the country is. So I said, okay, yeah, well, why not? But if you go out as a spare now, you've got to fit into the
right.
thing. But if you had the rank, you might take over a flight.
Right.
Stuff. So the day comes, mid-January 1945, and we go out across the channel. Nobody aborts, and we'd head off 45 degrees. We're going to go into Germany. We're heading down to Switzerland. Now, in those days, we were seeing no airplanes day after day after day, or we were seeing hundreds of them, masses of them. And so we kind of evaluated whether we said, oh, the hell, this is our last mission anyway. It doesn't matter. Let's go. Let's do it. So we go out as the spares. Nobody aborts. We're heading down to Switzerland. We have the old type VHF radio, 4-channel buttons. And once you're separated by so many miles, you don't hear anybody. So we can talk, but we can't. They can't hear us, and we can't hear our squadron. And so we get down there, and the other thing is, if you fire your guns, you break the tapes, and you got black on them. And when you get back, they all want to know what happened. And so we're going down there, and we're flying along, and he says, "Hey, there's Mount Blanc down there." He said, "Let's go down and drop our tanks on Mount Blanc and strafe them, see if we can set them on fire." Holy smokes, we've already done enough.
I think I detected a little bit of an accent there.
This dead of the winter, there was nobody up there.
Yeah.
And we've already done enough to get court-martialed already. And I'm a very responsible 22-year-old major. So I said, okay, let's do that. And so we dropped our tanks and we fired our guns. That's the important thing. He says we set them on fire. I don't think so. And anyway, time to come home. Northern France is still occupied. We come down on the deck. We flew on the deck all the way home. We flew, I forget how many hours for. We're the last guys home. The last 2 airplanes, the whole group landed. we're taxiing in, and I got this great feeling. Oh boy, we're over. We're going home. And I looked down at my hard stand, and all these people are sitting in the hard stand. And I said, my heart really sank. I thought, how the hell did they find out about this already? And I said, oh, no, it's my last mission. They're here to pat me on my back and, all this. So I pull into the hard stand, cut the mixture, switch the tail around, and my Otto Heino, my crew chief, jumps up on the wing, and he says, Andy, he says, the group shot down 57 airplanes today. How many did you and Chuck get? And that's the story how Chuck Yeager and Bud Anderson missed one of the biggest air battles of World War II.
Oh, boy. Eventually, we've only got a couple minutes left. Got 2 minutes left here. So you and Chuck Yeager have flown together in Old Crow and Glamorous Glen, again, recreated.
We did that 50 years later.
Okay.
Exactly the same day.
And where was it where you made the gear check over the tower? Where was that?
Maxwell Air Force Base.
And so now the owners of those airplanes let you guys take their airplanes.
I'm sorry?
The owner of those airplanes let you guys go solo with those airplanes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we flew them for a number of years.
So what's it feel like to fly one without guns and all that stuff?
Well, they're a lot lighter. They perform a little better. But they're still a Mustang.
So tell me the story here. You fly, I guess, right past the tower. And then as you're going to land, you think to yourself, and what do you do?
Oh, when we did that?
Yeah.
Well, we came in to land, and, when you come in to land, you fly in a formation and you pitch out.
Right.
Give a few seconds and pitch out, and then you come in and land. Well, when I pitched out and got at the top of the pitch, I just rolled it like that.
And what was unusual about that?
I never do that sort of stuff.
Did a lot of guys do that in World War II when they came back from missions?
Victory roll, yeah. But I never did, honest to God.
And throughout the entire war, you never suffered any?
Never did a victory roll.
And you never suffered any damage to your airplane?
No.
And in the 105, no damage?
No. Actually, I got a small round in the Mustang one time. Right after the invasion, we were doing ground support interdiction for 30 days.
Right.
And I picked up a small arms, but, it must have been a rifle. Didn't even come out.
Wow.
It was so small, they kind of reamed it out and smoothed it up. And I took a British shilling coin and took it and pounded it in there. And